哦，还有个洞，然后那个斜坡就顺着那个洞的，从洞子掉下去。但我对这个来说，我是想说哪可以加个洞。对。然后我现在就是，因为我看到这个，所以我现在有没有去接触其他的？
但是也可以。哦，我想到了，就是我现在想的是说，这个椅子，它现在我只画的是圆的一个课程嘛，但是我想说，这里可以塞到背上，就你坐的时候，就不管是，有切掉，就现在人坐的时候，哦，就这里画了嘛。那我如果这里开个洞。然后就是这个课程只是缩到这，然后这个水可以从这里流下去，因为它本来就是，不行，它必须要是在这儿。
所以我不知道这个洞这个东西用到你这个，而且我现在我也想不到其他的。
因为我想说，如果我不去转它的话，我这个水它本来就有这么一个 slope，所以水是会这样下去的嘛，下去看。
我现在倒想回到你之前那个想法，就是这个球它上面有个盖子，然后你把它盖子推下去之后转到下面之后就，这个球上面有个盖子，然后这个盖子可以跟这个中间那个轴转到后面，这个盖子是可以防御的，就是它这是个完整的圆球，这个球上面的盖子呢是可以顺着这个椅子中间那个轴转到下面，这就是一个这样转到后面，你转到后面呢，打开之后你就可以坐上，然后呢，再把它转回来就反过来。那这不是你现在的这个思路，所以我现在没有太想到其他的怎么能够。
我想问，就是说为什么你觉得这个女生很假吗？Oh, he's not actually coming.
I muted him.
Oh.
And if she doesn't,
你觉得这个很假吗？
因为我只是说你是想让这种非常，就是一个是完全没有，
就不需要太多的 cleaning。
不，我就是说这种转，就这个转嘛，就是说没有做过这个动作，就是没有任何之前没有任何意思有这么一个需要你去做这么一个东西，所以可能需要会去适应，就是。
Hello?
Yo, can you hear me?
Yo.
You hear me?
Yeah. You wanna come over? Yeah. Do you want to share your screen from your other computer?
I don't know why fucking two windows open right now.
或者不用说180度，或者就是能让它倾斜一点。就是这样。能够 balance 住，能轻一点，然后能 balance 住，就是不用你转一半圈那样，就是动作稍微小一点。
但是就说怎么让
You see Inception?
For some reason I can't click on that screen. Present it.
My email?
Oh yeah. Why is it dark though?
Yeah, why is it dark? I don't know. It's weird.
或者这样的，
It's not dark on your end, is it?
It's dark on my laptop. What the shit?
就往下靠。
这个就能往转，就是这个机器还是就是你。
I mean, it's not totally set up yet.
但是通过一种我也不知道是弹簧啊，还是什么，还是什么。
So I put you up. Your webcam is fine.
重心。
This one, I don't know why it's. Do you want to try joining first with that one?
对。
Is that the same email?
但我只是说怎么让它是不需要你去做任何事情。
Yeah, let me close this one out real quick.
Okay. 如果你想，只是一点。我不在想太把任何就是 打破你的思路，然后把我的东西加进去。
Let me see what I'm gonna eject you. Hold on.
说你是可以，如果
对，因为我现在确实觉得，我确实想说改这个 flex， 因为我觉得现在这个就是。 我特别想就是结合像我第一次发的 metal frame， 我不知道你记不记得之前我特别喜欢这个，就是我喜欢就是一个特别是 solid 的一个形状和一些就是很细的这种 metal 结合。
Oh.
有人进哎
No, no.
That's
I'm not anymore.
I took it. God damn it, I caught Deb. You gotta let me do that, man.
Victor, you love me. You want to have this.
Where am I gonna sit now? Oh, because I'm taking.
You can sit like this.
Okay, help me reserve that.
That's weird.
Okay.
对，
可以 OK。
对，我就是想somehow可以利用这个，
Alright, invite.
就是用
Are you gonna record it?
It's being recorded right now.
用这个 frame 结合这个。
我觉得这个算是一个就是很 personal 的一个事情。
对。
What's your personal aesthetic？ 这个我觉得不是说，
就是跟
谁能告诉你？
对。
即使 even if Sarah said something, I feel like that's just her personal.
Right.
A lot of times you feel like.
因为其实像 Mike 他想让我能
Oh, Sarah's right there.
想让你们突然有什么
It's like a Chinese.
Yeah, I got that. Wait, that was not it.
Here's the problem. Like when I want to refer to someone in
You
Chinese,
say S.
Oh, S.
You just make the nickname.
Ice.
Think of another like potato. Just say something in that.
沙拉。
There you go.
这样
Shall I?
Would you mind plugging me in?
I love it.
我先做开始了。
How's that look?
Yeah, that's much better.
Wait, I wanna talk to that. You're tightening your bag. It's like,
What's up?
Hey, if you guys are coming for the think and drink, do you wanna gather around?
Yo, thank.
are we starting?
Oh, there's also beer in the freezer. That might be kind of cool.
Are you guys looking off of a monitor or is this a projector?
No, we got it on projector.
Oh, nice.
Hey, by the way.
Hey. That.
Oh.
Hi. Hi. All right.
Wait, one sec. Hold on, people are just getting settled, grabbing beers and stuff.
I'm trying to figure out where I should start.
Okay. We just had midterm, so everyone's unwinding.
Quick
Yeah.
question.
What's
Should
up?
we follow along if we have KeyShot on our computer?
I mean, I guess you have like the step file of the thing. Of
Yeah,
like,
if you want to try dropping into KeyShot, you can try it.
they don't have the full assembly, but they have like one of the parts. But if you want
I'm just going to teach you like basics on materials and setting up the camera, stuff like that. And
Okay.
best ways to export stuff.
Here, show you everyone here. Let's start. So I think everyone that's staying is here. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do like a quick intro for Kenny. Kenny and I have known each other for a long time. We went to high school together in Shanghai, and then we went to Purdue as well. And oh, sorry. And he studied industrial design in college, and he's really the reason that I ended up in the field as well, because I was studying mechanical engineering and I realized he makes amazing stuff and there's a role for engineers in that field as well. And I really think there are two kinds of designers. There are people that work incredibly hard at developing design skills, and there are also people that have intrinsic talent and learn to develop that talent. And Kenny falls into the latter category. He's always been like incredibly talented and has like amazing visual sensibility, and is like fortunate enough to pair that with work ethic and is now like an incredibly talented designer, not just having design sensibility. So thanks for coming, and I'm gonna let Kenny take it from here.
All right. So I'm sure you guys all seen the computer mouse from whatever a couple weeks ago and stuff.
You guys hear
I
me?
want to teach you. Can you guys all hear me? If you guys, I'll just like run through what I usually do when I like have a CAD model and I want to like start
Wait, can
putting
you hold on?
colors on it.
Can you guys hear him back there?
I can hear
Kinda?
It's like it's mini.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's volume though?
Hello. Hello.
Give me 1 second. It's fine? Okay. Well, I'm gonna try to hook you up. Can you try talking? Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Kenny?
Hello.
Whatever.
Yo.
Kenny.
What's up?
Okay.
Hey, what's up?
My face real big.
No, it's just we're on your screen, so
Oh, okay. So you guys see my monitor,
yeah.
not my face. Cool. It's good. I don't need to show my face. What am I doing? See, where should I start? All right, so importing a file. I'm sure that's something you guys run into a lot or need to do. I'm trying to find my damn file I was using earlier. 1 second. I had it organized. No, it's not. Mouse. A lot of files. This is my really organized file system.
Yeah, I like it.
Pretty good. Mouse 7.2 Heyman. There we go. Drag and drop. Pretty easy. Import. There's not too much you need to do here. Most of this, like, the presets are good enough for whatever you need. And if you do need to change any orientation or size, you can always tweak any of this stuff once it's in the KeyShot file. So typically, the file will come in like this. Whoa, what the hell? All right, that's weird. Let's just pretend it's this one.
Oh, and Kenny, this is pretty informal, right? So people can
Yeah,
start
you just
questions whenever.
start yelling questions or tell me to stop or do whatever
Okay.
you want. When you guys are working in SolidWorks or any 3D programs, you want to make sure you assign different colors or make sure they're separate parts. Or once you drop it into KeyShot, it's all going to like blend together and not work. So in my SolidWorks file itself, these are all broken down into why is this weird? Oh, that was the wrong file. Time out. Let me zoom in. All right. So in SolidWorks,
Kenny.
which is the CAD program I use, what's up?
Kenny.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a question.
Yeah. Ask.
That means separate parts that are in separate layers, or just like separate parts within a layer.
Yeah. So when you're importing an assembly,
Yeah.
do all the parts come in as in separate layers, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if you're doing a SolidWorks assembly and you drop it in, KeyShot should still be able to read it as separate entities, whatever you space it out as. So if it's like separate bodies or separate parts within an assembly, it'll all be separate for the most part. Sometimes, depending on how like finicky KeyShot is, it like might freak out on you, but like typically it should work as separate bodies. And worst case scenario, just change the color of the surface. That's sometimes how I like just hack it. If you do that, it will for sure be a different material you can assign it. So for an example, oh my gosh, are you freaking out? Actually, give me 1 second. I'm gonna close this and then reopen it. because I think I did something wrong this morning. And KeyShot.
Did you purchase KeyShot?
I did not. I have work KeyShot. Do you guys all have 6 or 7 even? That just came out.
7.
I have 7.
Oh, nice. I think I haven't messed with that too much yet, but the biggest benefit there is using translucent materials. What I've been doing so far is I've been using textured glass, which kind of works. But KeyShot 7, if you guys ever mess with like acrylics or like translucent silicones, which I guess is a possibility, I would maybe just look up like a YouTube tutorial for that type of stuff. So I'm gonna start just going at it with materials. I think I use a lot of material graphs. If you guys want to start, if you guys ever have any experience with it, it's a really powerful tool to assign.
Can you back up for a second? I want to hear a little bit about, like, what was your intent? Like, what did you decide the materials were going to be for this mouse? How did you make those decisions? And then maybe let's dive a little bit into like the material features in KeyShot.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to open up this file because it has. This project was really experimental for me. I mean, it was like a SolidWorks exercise and a KeyShot exercise, and the KeyShot part was actually me just exploring materials and how stuff might look. So some crazy ones I did. Got some ombre, some matte to gloss, which is pretty sweet. There's camo, which they're all out of order.
So did you just copy the file and then add different materials to it?
Yep.
Why did you move them around in like XYZ?
It really depends on lighting. There's people that, like, everyone has their own preference. Like, just like SolidWorks too, you can build the tree in so many ways and still accomplish the same thing. My method is sometimes just copying like my mouse and then reorienting it so I get the best lighting on it. So I think for this one, I was really trying to capture the light rays on it, thus the angle. And I think.
Can you show us how to reorient it, and maybe that'll show how the light affects it as well?
Okay, so this mouse here. When you select your object, you can go to positions here. And the best way to just orientate stuff without like tweaking these numbers is just turning this guy on. And you can do like free moving of stuff. So like, for instance, if you guys are messing in assemblies and you want to do exploded views, you can do that in SolidWorks too, but you can also do that in KeyShot. And it might actually be easier if the whole point of your render is to show like a proof of concept. Like, I'd say just take it to KeyShot and mess with it in there. If you're doing an animation that's a bit more complicated, then maybe stick with SolidWorks, but anything like exploded views, I would use KeyShot as just my personal preference.
Why would you use that?
It's just easier to manipulate, and you don't like add more layers of complexity or another feature in SolidWorks. Because, like, for instance, this file here, there's a little bit of lag. Okay, so I'm gonna
well, imagine if you wanted to like tweak something a little bit, and you had to go back to SolidWorks, tweak it, then export it, and then drag it back into KeyShot and kind of start your file over. It's easier to like be able to make those changes inside KeyShot.
Yeah. So this is the shell I'm gonna move, the top housing. Actually, that's the wrong file. Let me stop moving that one. Like,
so you guys see how in that feature tree, like, it's a many part assembly, and all those like little checkboxes represents a single part.
Yeah. I mean, when you import these files, it's going to be really messy. Like, just the KeyShot system just labels them randomly. I'm kind of lazy about labeling stuff, and I just click around until I find it. But for the most part, they break it down into like your main part assemblies, whatever in your model. So right now I have the top housing selected, and I'm just moving just that individual part. let's say that if you're doing like a wearables project, or I know one of the teams is working on like an earpiece thing, render it in someone's ear. You can do a lot of that in Photoshop to like mask out specific 3D parts, or you can try to manipulate, like let's say there's like a curved silicone bit that's meant to fit inside of your ear somewhere. You can use like these little cubes to stretch and warp, holy shit, whatever you want to do with it. And this is one way of doing something, and if you want a different view, it's super easy to just like rotate it and keep that same proportion, or you just take it into Photoshop and do whatever you want to do with it. Can I undo this? Yes, I can. All right. So my whole concept, or the reason why I orientated this to this angle, was to really show lighting. Let's see if I have that file. This computer is really slow right now. Come on. Background? Let's see if this works. The files get really big too. So the reason why I have so many part files is because every time I do an iteration, I usually throw it into KeyShot just to see and like throw colors on it and stuff to like see what that looks like. I wouldn't say it's the best way of doing things, but it's how I usually get around it. Okay, so I got the.
So you don't just use KeyShot for final renderings. You're like in the middle of.
My personal like design thing is to like put it into KeyShot as fast as I can to really start thinking of the final design. Because the sooner you start looking into textures and materials, the better understanding you're going to get of how this final design is going to look. So every time I'm in my like rough models phase at work, as soon as I'm really close to being finished with it, I start putting on colors and putting on different like textures of plastics and glass and stuff and display stuff. And that just helps me speed up the thinking process on how I want to get everything oriented.
Wait, where did that background come from?
I just turned it on. Let me get this thing back to on top of the mouse. Uh-oh, I screwed something up. Let's pretend.
There's no origin?
There's usually like a little menu that, oh, I can just type zeros, never mind. There we go. That worked.
What did you just do?
The translation here. Another thing for you guys working with assemblies, you can adjust, this is like, you can see this tree right here. This is the main like part file, and it has its own translation and rotation and stuff. But if you go inside the subfiles, they're all zeros. So you can adjust them individually. It's gonna work as a big folder once you like, you know, minimize it and stuff, but they all have their like origin points. So this render, I added this curved backdrop as a way to like show off my surfacing and highlights. If you go into environments, you can adjust how this looks exactly. The render speed's not the greatest right now. But adding a background layer just is a good way to add like depth and adding really subtle shadows. I'm personally not a fan of the KeyShot ground shadows. They just don't come out that great. And if you take it into Photoshop, they just kind of look like shit. So I like either building my own or actually building a 3D background. And so the way you can do that is if you go into Edit, Add Geometry, and there's a couple of versions of what you can do. There's ground plane and backdrop ramp, which is what I'm using. The backdrop ramp gives you that nice like highlight curve. I mean, these are very subtle shades of white, but once it's rendered, you can really see like some of the details that will come out. I guess this one's not really reflective of what I'm talking about, but this is a black one. You can see how the shadows will come out and stuff like that. So this is rendered all in with the backdrop on it. And you can kind of see, like, every time I set up my lights, I'm always looking for the best way to show off highlight points and curves. So if I go to my website somewhere, where's my website? Like I set, so this render here, I put the mouse on top of a 3D background, and then I kind of rotated the environment to get that like nice light glare on top. So this kind of shows that it has a curved geometry. Sketching.
Wait, how much of that is just accomplished in KeyShot, and how much of that did you like post-process in Photoshop?
I rely very heavily on, I used to do a lot of Photoshop, but now it's all KeyShot because it's super powerful. There's some small tricks I can teach you guys after for like brushing stuff, like adding noise, which is a really powerful thing. And you can adjust contrast with like features, but those are some just really handy tools to use and quickly brush up your sketching, your renders. So these are all like just slightly brushed up in Photoshop, but everything's pretty much just out of KeyShot. Yeah, see, so this is the angled one I was showing you on KeyShot, that KeyShot file. The reason why it was angled to get that glare, and it kind of looks like it's floating. So you have this like nice little drop shadow on the bottom. I'm trying to zoom out. Oops. Where it looks like it's kind of floating. So this is also in KeyShot. Just I took my model and just like did the move, like the 3D move features, and was able to do this like quick exploded view to show different callouts and stuff, compliance labels. And yeah, so these are like just different materials you can assign to it. All right. So that's that. Is there any other particular questions you guys want to know, like that might apply directly to projects and stuff?
Can you zoom all the way out and let us see the entire backdrop that you have there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. I make it really big.
Mm.
So did you create that shape, or is that?
You can, so I'll just add one real quick. So go to Edit, add Geometry, Backdrop Ramp. And then that's somewhere. Oh, it's right there. Okay, so here's a really handy hotkey that you guys should all know. It's hold Shift, left click, Shift, right click. It's a copy and paste feature.
Oh.
Really, really handy if you're doing a lot of material assignments, and especially in assemblies, you're gonna want to like learn that or just remember that as a
Shift left click, Shift right click.
Yep. So that's the standard KeyShot ramp. I like making it really big just so you can like really mess with the angles and rotate your shot. While I'm here showing you how to like move it, I'm sure you guys all know how to like pan and rotate stuff, just spinning stuff. So you can create camera angles with that. So let's say I set my backdrop now. This is on the ground plane. This is the camo mouse. I'm gonna hide this other mouse. There we go.
By the way, what do you have for your lighting preset?
My lighting preset is custom. I don't know why. That's weird. I usually just use basic or product. I don't mess with this area too much, to be honest. It's all on how I build the environment, which is something that gets pretty complicated, and it really depends on how much time you guys have to mess with this stuff. But my favorite ones are, let's see, environments, 3 panels. Like this basic 3-panel one is enough to capture a lot of good detail.
Can you recap what an environment is? So it's like number of light sources and what else? And like type of light sources.
Let me try to hide something real quick. There we go. What an environment is?
Yeah, like what are you choosing when you're selecting an environment?
It's for me, an environment is all about just lighting. If you have really nice surfacing in your CAD model, you want to like select something that will really capture that. So for my particular model, I had a 3-panel and I built these additional light sources. So what you see on the top right here, this is something I added. These are additional lighting pins. If you guys ever mess with photography, you'll kind of understand like you can add different lights to like a still life photo shoot and it'll get you different results when you have different lightings. You can add color accents or light accents to specific surfaces if you do that. So this is basically what this is, and it's not really showing right now. So I think I'm just gonna build one real quick, if that works.
You just drag it in there.
Yeah. I kind of see it's kind of dark, so I'm gonna try rotating it, see if it brightens up or darkens. I usually bump up the brightness and the contrast really high depending on what you're rendering. If it's like a white on white thing, I would keep it pretty low, but for what I am doing, I'm gonna make it pretty bright. Height, I don't really mess with too much, but actually I do mess with height. Let's mess with that. So another reason, like I said earlier, a backdrop, a 3D like shape to have in here, you have this very nice shadow that's formed versus your like CAD shadow that they build in it won't be as like clean and natural looking as this. This KeyShot thing is not loading fast. Okay, so maybe I won't show you guys this because this is going to take too long for this.
Wait, so you can produce nice renderings with basic environments.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a nice render right now. Let's see if I can set up a render. That's going to take too long, actually. What if I do 72? Do you guys usually print projects or just digital stuff? Digital?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. 150 is plenty for anything like that. For anything you want to like really zoom in on, I'd go to like 200 or something, and the print size is not like super relevant. Okay, so some other really important things you want to do in your output is always include alpha transparency. And then clown pass is a very important one when you get into Photoshop.
What is that?
Yeah, what's that?
Clown pass. Okay, so so when you clown something, or I don't know what the actual term is to describe that, but it gives you this, which is just very contrasting colors of all of your different parts in your file. So let's say you want to change like the shell of this to something else. Let me see if I can find a better render. Okay, so I'll do this one. What's that?
So with that, will you be using these as masks for?
Yeah. Except nothing's really mapped properly. There we go. Okay. So let's say I want to change the color of this piece right here. I can just select this, hide that, go to this part. I'm going to create a new layer for now. And then let's make it like dark black, something like that. Delete it. Then you have that control now to individually select surfaces and parts to do stuff like that. I mean, it's not the prettiest, but there's also like layer effects you can mess with. Like this stuff here. Multiply is usually a safe one to go to. If it doesn't work, overlay works sometimes.
What do you mean when it doesn't work? What are you trying to do?
To make this color I just dropped in blend in body. Those are just small. What's up?
In this example, you're making the white darker?
Yeah, if I want to make it like a primer gray or something.
Okay.
I can like easily adjust that, or if for any reason you need to change the color or delete it or just copy it and paste it somewhere else.
Hey, Kenny, question. So in that project, is the label, when in the process is the label added?
This label I actually added in KeyShot, which I can show you. This one is a molded in logo, so it's built into the CAD, but for this stuff, you can KeyShot it. And I will show you right now. Once I get into KeyShot. I will not render. Do you guys know about cues?
Yeah. Huh? Cue?
Yeah, render cues.
No.
This page or not? Okay, so if you have a bunch of renders you want to do, and ideally you want something that can either have KeyShot run in the background or just like a dedicated computer, but you can set up like, hit add job up here like that.
Or run overnight.
Yeah, you can let it run overnight, but it'll render like as many renders as you want, and it'll set it up in this queue for you to not be there and watch over it to take care of it. Okay, there's some missing parts, but that didn't happen. So I can save that for later and then go back to my KeyShot file. I'm gonna just like rotate it a bit. This is a cool angle, so I'm gonna add that job. Ignore that. That doesn't usually pop up. Just letting you guys know. It's just my file. So what you see here is it saved those two different angles.
And whatever lighting, whatever else you change?
Whatever lighting you want, it's whatever at that immediate moment you hit add to render queue, it'll save everything you see. And then at the end of your KeyShot session, just hit process queue and let it run its course.
A quick question about the output. Why do you usually output as TIFF?
TIFF for Photoshop, yeah.
TIFF for Photoshop?
For
Photoshop. Okay.
Or Photoshop. You can select which one you want.
Okay.
So why TIFF then?
I don't really have an answer for that. I kind of go back and forth. They both operate very similarly in Photoshop. I haven't, like, I'm sure there's some like other technical reason for it, but you can, with TIFFs, you still have layer options too. Same with Photoshop. So it's not like it makes too big of a difference. I mean, the file sizes almost seem identical. It's just whatever you're comfortable with, really. I guess TIFFs can open on non-Adobe programs, so that's one benefit. But yeah, clown passes, definitely if you need it and you want to edit individual parts. And then transparency, include alpha, which basically, let's say I hid this background and I want to render something that's like floating. Adding alpha transparency, like having that checked, allows me to render this, and then when I open it in Photoshop, I won't have like this gray background. Because if I unchecked it, it would think this gray background is something I wanted.
So do you not get the background at all, or can you just remove it if you
It'll come in white. So let me see if I can find an example of that. Photoshop. So it'll come in like floating like this if you have the alpha on. And this is like the clown layer. So this is a product that came out a year or two ago. That a clown layer is really important if you want to like edit in particular like the lens of this and make it brighter or something. So I would go duplicate that and then or brighten it, something like that. Okay. Anyways.
So you can't get the transparency. Just basically, you can't get the background on a separate layer. You have to do two renders. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you can't get. So if the background is something you built into the model, like you're gonna see it for sure. There's no way of hiding it. If you don't want it there, just don't have a 3D part and then you'll be good to go. So when I rendered this, this was just floating in my gray space background, kind of like how this is right now. So any angle I render this, I can always have this just floating around, and then I can freely like move it or place it anywhere I want in my file. So an example of that, what's good for, what alpha would be good for is in context renders like this. So I basically found this photo of this keyboard and Cintiq, and then I used it in KeyShot as a backdrop, and then I orientated my mouse to fit that position and rendered without any background at all. And then I was able to take that in Photoshop and then kind of like scale it down a bit.
Wait, so you added the drop shadow in Photoshop?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had to add some really subtle details here to make it realistic, like burning some edges, adding like a bit of darkness here and stuff like that. But everything else, I mean, like getting the lighting down, this was all KeyShot. And then to tie it all together, you add noise, which you can kind of see how that graininess you see, that's noise.
Would it be possible for you to show us how to do that on Photoshop?
Yeah, noise?
Yeah, and just the shadow. How do you edit the shadow?
What does noise accomplish? I mean, yeah, dive into the Photoshop stuff. I'm curious.
Okay.
How does it make it look better?
Because it blends in with the background.
It doesn't look so like rendered. Like right now, if you don't have a texture onto your materials, I think this one has a texture, but it's just gonna look very not natural, I guess. It doesn't
like almost too clean.
Yeah, like it's just like a perfect gradient of colors and shading, and it doesn't feel believable. Once you add a layer of noise on it, though, it like changes. So for instance, I think this one actually doesn't have any edits on it. Yeah.
So you're just adding noise to the render layer, not the background.
Yeah. So you can kind of see how, like, to me at least, this looks very rendered because I just see very clean geometry and not a lot of like roughness in anything in these corners and stuff. I'm gonna actually brighten this real quick. So there's this feature, this little circle with the line through it. You can go to brightness contrast, and it adds brightness to everything below that. So let's make it really bright, just for the hell of it. I'm gonna duplicate it. Just always have a copy just in case. And then you go to filter, noise, add noise. That's way too much. I usually do like 1.2 needed, Gaussian monochromatic. I mean, this is still pretty extreme on how noisy I made it, but you can kind of see it almost adds like a fake texture to this, what was a very clean surface. And what may look very noisy from this close up makes it look just slightly more believable once you zoom out. And especially if you place it in context of any image, of any like photographed image, it just blends in a lot more. Because photography just naturally has a lot of noise in it, depending on the type of shoot you're doing. But that's like one small trick that like really ups your rendering aesthetics.
How to do shadow on Photoshop, like with feather, like to make
a shadow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
sure. So I'm gonna create a new layer. I'm gonna create a white layer. Drop that to the bottom. Hit X to invert the background foreground. Create a new layer. We'll take a brush. Hit X again to invert the color. So now I have black. Let's see if anything comes out. Okay. Let's see here. Let's make that like 100. All right, got black. Cool. gonna turn this back on. There, move that up a bit. Move this guy down. It really depends on the perspective of your product too.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Again. Okay, so this is floating. And you can always add noise to your shadow too. So Control F is a hotkey to repeat the filter effect. That's it. That's how you add a shadow. Does that make sense? Did that answer the question? yeah, it's just a dot base. I mean, for this one in particular, yes, because
I was trying to find a feather tool, but I couldn't find it on Photoshop. Like I used to
like seriously, with a dot, you can manipulate so much with it. It comes out cleaner too because you get these like really dark tones and it fades out really nice. Let me try to think of other.
One question, Kenneth. Where did you learn this kind of tricks?
Just time.
What?
A lot of time on rendering shit. I mean, it's really just like experience of working with renders and doing stuff for marketing teams and presenting to clients and stuff, how to make it more believable.
Do you pick them up from other people, or is it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everywhere I worked, I learned something new every time about just different rendering styles and stuff like that. One big thing I'd like to share with you guys is your render camera angle. What I see from a lot of student work is just really distorted lens perspectives. And it's really easy to just like throw something into KeyShot and then render it. I think the preset's like 35 maybe or something.
Mm-hmm.
So you get this like really exaggerated look where everything's skewed. My personal taste in rendering is more of like near isometric, where like it's not 400. Like 105 to 130 is a pretty solid perspective because it gives you a pretty realistic look. And this is very close to how like Apple products would render their stuff, Google, stuff like that. I think that's like the new trend. That's my call right now. I'm calling it isometrics. That's the new way of looking at stuff.
What was your question?
Kenneth, what do you use for furniture? Because for products, I guess 135 would work, but if it's a bigger piece, then it still seems square, right?
For like larger stuff, so yeah. But do you have experience making? I guess how would you approach larger scale stuff differently?
I think it's the same. Depends.
Like furniture.
Furniture, I'd still stick with like 100 probably in that area. The reason why you don't go down to 35 is it's just not a very pleasant way of looking at a render. Like I just see so many portfolios with it, just like they think it's like super cool to have it like close up and the shot of like a specific detail. But then like in reality, you're just not giving a true view and image of your product. I'd rather have it like at this distance of 100 or plus. For larger products, I'd say pretty similar. It just works better. I don't really know how to like quantify why it works better. It just does.
How much of this varies from person to person and company to company?
We're becoming, at Garmin, we're getting pretty consistent with this perspective. Garmin, Google, Apple, we all have very similar rendering perspectives now. It's just like the natural way of shooting stuff. If you ever mess with the photography, it's kind of the same idea. Like a lot of products are taken with like the 80 mils or the 100 mils, and this is pretty much what that means. This is a 100 millimeter lens shooting that.
Kenneth, on the camera render which you were showing us, the lenses, is it a label and a glass in front of it, or you made the lenses from scratch?
The lens is from scratch. So I can show you this file. This is kind of crazy, but I spent like 3 weeks working on this, trying to get all the materials. KeyShot 7 could do so much better with how this works, but this is actually a liquid. Crazy.
A liquid?
Yeah, so if you ever do acrylic or anything that's like clear and you need to see the geometry inside, I always use liquid. It's like water.
Yeah. You
What's up?
water, you assign water to the parts that are supposed to be in the acrylic?
Yeah, I mean, in KeyShot 6, yes.
Okay. But in 7, you don't have to do the same?
In 7, I mean, I haven't messed with 7 yet.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just thinking, like, if you do have a project that does require some sort of like clear material, sometimes I think liquid works really well. Glass might work better, depending on if it's a textured part or not. If you're designing something that's like a cylinder that has no texture on it, then liquid could be really nice. But if it's like silicone, it's always going to be textured, because if you have polished silicone, it's going to be sticky, or I mean, it just doesn't look that great. So I'm just thinking like that earpiece project or the hearing aid project. Like if you do silicone, you want it textured. You want some sort of like graininess on it, so it looks more believable. And I would use glass, rough glass for that. For the lens, I mean, do you guys have any projects that are actually will be using a lens?
I was using one, so I was just curious. I was using a 3 layers of glass, and behind that one label, which was basically a lens label.
Okay, I'll give you, I mean, the lens was a really tricky part to make, but I'll give you like a quick run through on how I made it. If you look right here, I actually basically took this dome shape and copied it 4 times.
Yeah.
You create basically a stacked layer of domes, and each layer has something different. Let me see what this is. Material, edit material. Okay, so there's 2 layers of clear glass. One tip is you always keep the refraction index the same. And the other thing that adds this like nice rainbow effect is something called lens film, which is also a material you can add into it. And that gives you the ability to, I guess it's not actually anything. This is a material you can find, I think, somewhere in the materials list. Let me double check. Lens. Yeah, lens film.
Hey, Kenny, complete tangent. Why does Garmin want to go into this product space?
Good question. So we can burn
like
out GoPro.
Running, filming, action, extreme sport thing?
Yeah, we're just trying to like, I don't know what the fuck our executives are thinking all the time, but it's it's just like part of the ecosystem of products, because our watches can control this product. It's all like related in some sort of way. But yeah, we have a GoPro.
Is it cheaper? Is it better?
It is not cheaper.
Is it better? What else?
I didn't assign materials to everything here because this would take like forever.
So how did you guys collaborate on this? Any tips on that?
On this product?
Just in general, when it comes to
I mean, I was on the latter half of this project, so I was really assigned to just rendering it. But the typical process would be like ID would get this product coming down from like the marketing team or exec team, and then we'd have about 3 to 5 months of industrial design time. And at the end of that, we have something called ID freeze, which is the handoff. At that point, we are working with the mechanical engineers and making sure that the design intent is intact while they like start shelling out the product and tweaking all the necessary components, making sure that it's compliant with all the tests and stuff like that. The whole process takes 8 months to 2 years, depending on the type of tech we're doing. That's just kind of like a rough estimate.
How would you communicate the design intent of this to an engineer?
I really wouldn't think this is the best product to keep it as boxy as you can.
do the mouse then.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about your mouse then?
Okay. So I would hand this CAD to the ME. I mean, it would be built hypothetically around a rough stack up with like PCB, battery, and stuff like that. For me, the big takeaways I want to keep is this pill shape. Like this is a must stay for sure. Another design feature, maybe like this chamfer here. As long as I'm like communicating that with the ME and they're not like completely destroying my model by the end of their process, I'm okay. There's some geometry that I understand might be tweaked a bit, like the curve of this back or something, or like parting lines and tooling, stuff like that. That really depends on the product budget. So for this product, I can imagine one clean pull going north like that. There's going to be some parting lines on the edge here. And if we have enough cost or enough budget, I'd recommend maybe polishing like a secondary process after the machine, or after the tool part to polish that that edge off. If not, it's either going to be, what's that?
You're talking about injection molding?
Yeah, this is an all plastic part. So this would be like a textured plastic. I would give them like the specific type of texture I want it, which is, there's a lot of different grades. There's VDI, there's MT, just all different processes to add very fine texture to it. If I want to recommend, like for instance, soft touch on the bottom of this, which is probably what I'm looking at, I need to accept the fact that there's probably like a 0.2 to 0.5 thickness increase, so that I might lose some of my details. That's stuff I have to try to balance out with the ME. Like, for instance, like little gap right here, maybe I have to thicken it or something to keep this nice curve that I want. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some other like tooling marks that I want to have to work with. So a lot of it's just like working with the ME to see if we have enough budget to do any secondary processes to polish it off, or if there's ways we can hide it, stuff like that. Yeah, I think as long as you communicate. What's up?
What's the question?
Does he ever work with like a mix of lights, like that blue material layering?
Oh yeah. Can you talk a little bit about emissive lights, like the little, like, is it an IR thing? I don't know. What is it on mouse?
Yeah,
Yeah. The little thing on the bottom of your mouse. Like the little laser thing.
Oh. There's no light in here. I didn't.
Was that the lighting?
Can you talk a little bit about, yeah, how
That's the refraction.
Oh, yeah, whoa.
What'd you think it was?
No, it changed colors, I assume, because of the material property and how it's
Yeah,
interacting.
it's a lens film.
But it's like live rendering as well.
It's not letting me zoom in much further. All right. I think if I change the environment too, probably. Yeah, so it's pretty cool to see. The lens film just adds a very subtle layer of detail onto your product.
So it's similar to what you were talking about on Verb earlier.
Yep, on the lens. I think this whole part is just, yeah, it's just a, oh wait, what? Why is there, oh, it's a thin film.
So Kenny, if you want to add the laser effect, would you do that in post, or would you do that in KeyShot?
When you say laser, are you talking about like a line of visible laser, or like just?
Yeah, just a light emitting, I guess.
I'd probably do that in Photoshop because it's probably faster. Let me open up another file real quick. It's possible in KeyShot. It just takes a while because you have to like constantly tweak how bright you want it and how it works with the other materials in your part. So when I was rendering this, the big thing that I had to pay attention to was how that subtle LED would refract onto this plastic housing and how it would like shine through this clear material. And it happened so that the liquid material was the best to really emulate what a real LED and what acrylic would look like. And again, with this part itself, like, I think there's like multiple layers. So I basically duplicated this shell, scaled it down.
Can you talk about what material you applied to that LED, or whether did you make it a light source, or how did you render the LED?
Okay, so this is a red LED that's inside. Let's hide this. That is just a solid red LED. And then you can adjust the intensity. This is fairly low for what I'm doing because it's meant to be a subtle light. And then on top of that, this is thick glass, which gives you that subtle refraction of light that spreads it out a bit more.
So LED is a material that you can apply in KeyShot?
It's an emissive you can apply.
Okay.
There's no like again, it depends on like the surface of your LED and how if it's like a really big LED, then you're gonna want to add some sort of material on there to kind of like make it look more realistic. Because if not, when you render it, it's just gonna look like this bright spot with no texture, no subtle shades. Like you can see with this light here, there's actually different like values of light. There's like a brighter center, and then it kind of gets more red on the outside, stuff like that. That just adds subtle details that make it more believable. Another thing that this LED is kind of making me think about now is, let this render out a bit, but you can see the texture on this plastic. That's something that just, again, adds another layer of detail onto your products. You can achieve this with noise too in Photoshop. So if you don't have time to like mess with the material graph, if you don't have time to mess with this, or you don't want to, then do it in Photoshop, add some noise to that specific part.
Can you show us how you would add noise in KeyShot? Is that with material graph?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna close this again. I'm gonna open another one. So you can, actually, let me scale this up just to show you what this looks like. This is a texture map. So bump, there's.
Wait, you froze.
I froze? Still?
I think so.
Yeah, we don't see you moving right now.
Fuck. Nothing.
No.
I'm gonna stop sharing for a sec. Sorry, guys.
So, since we started a little late, do you want to go for like 10 more minutes? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Kenny.
You're welcome. What
This is awesome.
Hi, Kenny. I was wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the push and pull between the ID versus the mechanical engineers. Other than budget, how often do you guys communicate on a weekly basis, and also how do you justify your decisions, also from the other side as well?
You say without budget or
Without, what other reasons do you use to justify your decision, and also like how often do you interact with the mechanical engineer during the week?
So you guys see anything?
Yeah. You can hear
My
you.
email?
We don't see yours.
I ordered a doll for Halloween. It's gonna be sweet. All right. Wait, do you guys still see anything? Do you see,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. So depending on the project phase, right now on one project, I'm communicating with him maybe once every 2 days. So right now, the reason why we're doing that is because he's gutting out my ID model and putting in all the necessary components for like the GPS antennas, the PCB and the battery. And there's like a bunch of dials and switches that he's considering. And with that, there's like very small tweaks that he may need to do, like increase the height of, or like decrease the thickness of this part, or kind of change the curve of one part to compensate for a switch or a toggle or a dial, stuff like that. So he'd either do a screen share with me and I would give him like an approval, or if I don't like it at all, I'll CAD something up and show him like how it's done, or this is what industrial designers, what ID recommends.
Show it. Are you
Does that
moving
answer?
your mouse right now?
What's that?
Are you moving your mouse right now?
Okay.
Oh, no, I am. What was I going to show you? I was going to show you something. Oh, textures.
I'm interested in finding out who then gets the final say. Like, how do you guys end up making a decision?
At Garmin, it's like we present to like the CEO and the director of sales, and if he likes it, then he'll approve it, and then we're good to go. If he doesn't like it, we scrap everything and start over.
Okay, so the sales get to make the final call.
Yeah, and that's a lot of corporate shit that I have to deal with. But I mean, like consulting too, you're gonna deal with that. Like, do what the client wants. You can make recommendations, but it's all about like how you pitch it and how well you can sell your idea without it getting butchered, because it always happens regardless.
All right, thank you.
Kenneth?
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, what's the typical budget on, like, say, the camera project or a mouse project?
A budget for this? I have no idea. I did not think that far with this project.
What about for the GoPro thing?
Our like MSRP was like 650 or something. And it was probably like I forgot what they scoped out. It's been so long for that project, like upwards of $500,000 maybe, for just like budget, or I guess for like BOM costs and stuff. That's shit. It's been way too long. I can't really give you a solid answer on that. Okay. What am I doing? I'm showing you something. That's right. Not this. Hold on. Uh-oh. All right, cool. Read better. Shoot. All right, you know what?
Inhaler.
Yeah, I was looking for the KeyShot file, but I can't find it to show you the label thing. But I could probably add a label on here just for the hell of it. This is a material graph. I don't know why it's transparent. Doesn't need to be. Let's see if I delete this. Disable.
Wait, there is a question. What is it?
Yeah. So,
Wait, what's your process for diving? Like, what have you done prior to diving into material graph in terms of material?
I would pick like a basic material I want to mess with. Like it's going to be plastic, and then it's a hard material that's going to be rough. So I'll do like this. I'll drag it. Holy shit, that's not it. Zoom out. What? All right, there we go. So that's just hard, rough, black plastic. The material graph.
Does that not look good enough?
Nope. You can tell, or at least like I can. This is how I like call out students' work. It's just like how shitty they map their KeyShot files.
Why does it not look good to you? Like, what? Can you point out specific things about it?
I mean, I've been working with KeyShot for like 10 years now, and you can really start telling like what someone's actually put effort in for materials and what isn't properly mapped. Like for this, I just see this like matteness, unless it's specifically called out that this is like a really fine textured plastic. Like I have a hard time believing that this is what they want. So if you let this render out a bit, you can start seeing why I don't really see this as too believable. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to probably jack up the roughness a little bit. That helps. And then I'm going to open up Material Graph. So every time you want to add texture onto something, you can open up Material Graphs, right click, go to Textures, and then Noise Fractal, which is similar to Photoshop noise. But Noise Fractal allows you to add that, like this little black and white image here, this is like a very scaled up version of what I'm about to put onto this plastic. So you take this node, which is what this is called, and you drag it into bump. Bump is what the texture is the texture you're going to be assigning to this material.
Right. Like technically you're actually adding a lot of like little 3D details, right? Is that why it's called bump?
Yeah. And once you understand this, like how these bumps work, how like this image works, you can really start getting like crazy patterns and whatever you want to do with it. So fractal, I wrote this down. This part does take a lot of tweaking and just like rendering stuff out, but I'm just gonna like cheat a little bit and type in stuff. Usually one scale is usually not ever right. My safety is actually like 0.2 for some reason. I want to type 0.16 for now. Bump height, I'm going to make it 0.2. And then levels and fall off, I'd keep it about the same. So what you see directly on live KeyShot you'll probably think like I don't actually see any difference, but it's really like the output. When you actually hit render and let it process through, you're going to see these very fine details on your file. That's just like a very small thing that really I think differentiates like a good render and a bad render.
I don't think we have to dive into anything else. I know it's 8:15 and you're still in the office. Do you guys have any other final questions before letting Kenny go?
Are there any material libraries which are available? Like I have seen a few around, but haven't experimented. So is there something which you use often, apart from the default KeyShot libraries?
Material graphs?
No, material libraries. So there are some material libraries which you can directly download, apart from the KeyShot ones. So have you experimented with them, and do you find some of them which are really useful?
You said like downloading other programs or materials?
Materials. So specifically for stainless steel stuff,
I don't. A lot of it can be done just in KeyShot.
Okay.
And I mean, it's just a lot of messing around with it. Like you can like learn the basics of what to do, but then when you're actually like mapping it onto a product, like that just takes time. I'll show you one more thing since you asked about stainless steel. Discard. I think, so we have a spun stainless steel bezel button here. And this is either a texture or geometry. But you can create this look in KeyShot with the material.
Okay.
It just, I mean, again, there's like different options. I think you can go to metal. There's like spun aluminum somewhere in here. Anyways, it's one of the things you can mess with in here.
I do have a question. So if you're trying to render some, for example, if you're trying to use like materials like yarns or like super organic materials, how would you approach that?
Oh, that's really tricky. Yarn, like soft goods? Yeah. That is probably a good balance of Photoshop and KeyShot. Soft goods is really hard to render in KeyShot. There are fabric materials, but then it comes down to believability of your 3D geometry, basically.
Yeah.
For yarn specifically, I think there's like some meshes you can look up. Nope. Fabric? There's a fabric somewhere in here. But I've never messed with any of this stuff before. There's nylon fabric, which yeah, that just looks weird. Scale. I guess it kind of worked. Yeah, it's really hard in KeyShot.
So maybe you want to Photoshop.
Probably doesn't help much. Yeah, it's a lot of Photoshop. If you have KeyShot Cloud, this bottom left icon, you can try looking up fabrics.
Okay, yep.
That's another option. And really, like, if you open it and you download this material and you open up the material graphs, that's basically all the materials are, is people building their own material graphs from scratch and then creating their own skins and images they're like adding together to create stuff.
All right. Thanks, Kenny.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
But I don't.